Astronauts to the moon.
What's going on, everyone? Jaronism again, back with another fun video for you. Got all kinds of cool stuff in this one. We have some Dogma, basically just proof that science is now a religion of scientism, and they'll do whatever they can to block the truth. Don't ask me why, although I think some of us can figure out why. I got to show you something pretty cool with some math. I also did want to talk to the theist community, the Bible believers out there. Just to show you a little something that helped me see the light at the end of the tunnel. I want to show some of the atheist comments that were on the blog that I thought were hilarious. Just talk about set in their ways. And then I have some, I'm laughing already just thinking about it. I got some funny scientism preachers telling lies. Lawrence Krauss, got to be the funniest man ever. You cannot find a video of his without him sounding like an idiot. We got Neil deGrasse and Bill Nye, and I think you'll enjoy these. And then we got some Apollo stuff. You know, my favorite. Point out some errors there. I have a couple more pictures I found. And also kind of promoting the open letter to Professor Brian Cox. You might know who he is. Got some stuff at the end for him to look at. He's been issued an open letter now twice, once in August of 2014 and once just this last month. April 2015. He has failed to respond, which he's a scientist. Why are you not responding to open letters asking for facts and evidence? That's what science is, my friend. So I do hope Mr. Cox decides to answer his letter, since he feels like calling people morons for not believing in the Apollo landings, which I don't, so I guess I'm a moron. And I would like him to very much to answer those questions that have been asked to him. So we'll have to wait and see. To see how they did it, you can see we all were taught with the globe constantly shoved in our face from kindergarten on, taught as truth, and wouldn't have taken them very long either to put their people in the colleges, in the high positions in science. And then you set up a system by which the only people who can change those rules are through peer review. And in order to be peer reviewed, you must have gone to the same education that everyone else has gone to. That is part of their little plan. So, not very hard what they did, but the only way we're going to get people to wake up to it is getting some of those that have been taught the wrong way to take a closer look at what they actually believe and what they're teaching. You can see right in front of you here that Earth spinning in the vastness of space and everything else that they teach us, and for, I guess, their hate of God, I can't really think of why else they would do that. But now look at this image. Does that look like we are spinning? No way. That is still as could be. And if you look at this, if you do believe in the spinning blue marble, then you believe that this is how our planes operate on a day-to-day basis, going upside down and inside out, and I think that it's pretty obvious that that's not how things work. Look at this image and you'll see how there's two layers of clouds. Neither of them moving very fast, but definitely two layers. So explain how that works with the spinning Earth theory. How could this possibly work if they tell us that the atmosphere stays with the ground as the Earth spins 1,000 miles per hour? So what is the answer for why the clouds are able to move independently, yet the atmosphere is supposed to be sticking directly to the Earth? It's obvious nonsense. It doesn't work scientifically. It doesn't work by any testing. That's something you may or may not know, that the entire system is based on fabrications of math, and there is no proof that we are on a spinning globe. No more proof than us being on a flat land, or no more proof that we circle the sun than that the sun circles us. And that's something you can ask anybody in science, and they're probably going to lie to you. But if you really did your research, you would see that that is the absolute truth. It has been decided on philosophical reasons that we circle the sun and not the other way around. So first things first, I wanted to go through a few math problems just to show you what they're doing with it and how they use it to prove their little theorems. You can find this on Wikipedia under mathematicians or mathematics. Mathematicians seek out patterns and use them to formulate new conjectures. And the definition of conjecture is an opinion based on incomplete information. So that's not really what we should be basing any of our science on or our facts upon. Only when mathematical structures are good models of real phenomenon, then at that point mathematical reasoning can provide insight or predictions about nature. So you'll see here I have a real easy math situation. Let's say we had $16 and we needed to separate it between 4 people. So there's 2 different ways we can do that. We can, number 1, check out reality and see if it can work it out on its own. Number 2, we can do the math. But we know that $16 is 1,600 pennies, and we could then take those pennies, divide them up between the 4 people. Each person would get 400 pennies. So we actually do not need to do the math, because all the math will do at that point is absolutely prove what has already been proven in nature, meaning that the $4 each is the answer in real life, meaning if we did the mathematical equation, there's no way that we could come up with something different than $4. And you'll see on the screen there that I went ahead and worked it out. $4 is the correct answer. But like I said, we have no need to do the math, as the math will always just prove the reality. So when you hear that math proves something, it must prove the reality, or else it is a belief. You can believe that the sun is 92 million miles away, but it can't be tested. So that is the difference when they have created mathematical equations that we cannot test in reality. And you are forced to trust them, buy into their dogmas and their set of rules and regulations, or you can use your own mind and come up with your own answers and beliefs. The role of empirical experimentation and observation is negligible in mathematics compared to natural sciences such as psychology, biology, physics. Albert Einstein stated that as far as the laws of mathematics refer to reality, they are not certain, and as far as they are certain, they do not refer to reality. So, is their math proving your reality, or is it in and of itself your reality? So today, no consensus on the definition of mathematics prevails, even among the professionals. There is not even a consensus on whether mathematics is an art or a science. A great many professional mathematicians take no interest in a definition of mathematics or consider it undefinable, and some just say that mathematics is what mathematicians do. My problem with that, obviously, is we are allowing magical conjectures on paper to shape our reality. And that is not what math was ever intended for. What its purpose is simply to help prove our reality. The problem becomes, instead of using the math to simply prove our reality and help it match our reality, they're using it from a foundational position by setting that up first and not allowing us to test it. There's no way for us to know that it's true, so we're forced to either believe them or not. That's up to you, of course. I'm choosing not. So the next thing I wanted to do was prove to some of you theists or Christians out there that what you were taught, what the Bible teaches, what your pastor teaches about the fall of man cannot be possibly true. There is no way that a God intended for us all to live forever on the earth. And this is a calculator. You can see the address in the upper left-hand corner. You can go there and play with it. It's kind of fun. Basically, I set a couple parameters. So I started at year 1 with a population of 2 or 3. And we went with, at first, the 500-year point. You'll see that our population was still small, about 25 people, a few dozen. And that was after 500 years. But as you know, if you know anything about exponential growth, as time goes on, you're going to have a lot more people, and they're going to start adding up quickly. Now, remember, this calculator doesn't take into effect the fact that you were taught that we were not supposed to die. So this calculator kills people off at 80 years old or so. Remember that this number is going to be far too low, because in the Christian perfect world before the fall, of course there would be no death, and also you'd have women giving birth probably into their great late high numbers, or even forever. So quickly, you would have far too many people on the earth that the earth could even hold. And we're going to show you that here in a second. You'll see now I'm up to 5,000. In the year 5000, we've already got 206 billion people. So right now the earth has about 7.5 billion, or so. Quickly you'll see, and this is just with a 1% population increase, which if the Christian story was true, your population increase would be insane. I can't even imagine, but you'd have pretty much every female on earth probably giving birth probably every year. So of course you'd have much higher than a 1% population increase, which is actually around the average of the earth right now, the 1%. So again, I would never ask anybody to believe what I believe, or I'm not telling anybody to believe what I believe. I'm just giving you some hints as to what I think is a smart way to go about researching your own faith. And a place to start would be, if you think that the Bible is divine and you think that the entire thing is true, then you do believe that God is perfect, and you do believe that there was the fall of man, literally, and you do believe that a Satan or some sort of deceiver actually fooled Adam and Eve. And these things you should look at. Is this the God that you want to worship, the one that put the two humans here with Satan on the earth, allowed them to be deceived, put the tree in the middle of the garden for them? What I'm trying to get at is, I hope that you see, if you look deep enough, that there is a hidden meaning throughout the entire Bible. Is there a lot of truth in there? Absolutely. Is there a lot of stories that Christians are taking literally? Noah's Ark that shouldn't be? Absolutely. Some of those things are really what's causing me a personal problem, because as I'm trying to battle the science, I'm immediately being put into the Christian box. And that's not where I want to be, because I do think that they have their own dogma and beliefs that they have no right in believing, other than they want to say that the Bible is divine. So what I'm trying to show is, with just this simple math, you can figure out right away that the earth couldn't have sustained people for 7,000 years if everyone didn't die. So then right away you can say, well, the Genesis story must be allegorical, because it can't be telling a actual truth. That cannot be the point. And do you really want to worship a God that punished? They say there's been over 100 billion people who have lived. Do you really want to worship a God who is putting 100 billion people through agony and having them born in sin because the first two had an error, that they wouldn't even have known what a lie was? They wouldn't even have known what deceit was. They would have just believed the devil. And do you really believe in talking snakes? But we can get to that some other time. So just finishing up my little math problem here, what I was able to do was figure out that there's a few quadrillion people possible that could fit on the earth, and that was actually, again, way underestimating. I gave each person only 150 square feet, and also included all the surface area of the earth, not just the land, but also the oceans. And again, that's not even counting a need for stores and car dealerships and restaurants, etc. So you'll see that by figuring out how many people could fit on the earth, which is just a few quadrillion, in 10,000 years we would have what appears to be about 30 zeros after that number. So right away that should be proof to you that the intent from the beginning could not have been for humans to live forever. We would have all been stacked on top of each other. We would have all been robots. We wouldn't have known the difference between good and evil, meaning that you would just be a drone. You'd be walking around only doing what you were told to do or programmed to do. So I'm one that would definitely say that free will is much better. If you want to know, because I know some of you might also not believe in God, and I'll just real quick hit up why I do have a feeling that there is a greater intelligence behind this entire operation. Best way that we can look at that is, if you think of let's take a look at a seed. like a seed to a tree. And if you were to take that seed and just really clear your mind and just allow yourself to really look deep into that seed, and if you started to kind of follow the path that that seed will take in its life, it is what looks like a little tiny nothing in your hand. And with the addition of water and the sun, that tree will begin to grow. And it doesn't take time off. It just grows and grows and can end up becoming like the great sequoias you may have seen, hundreds of feet tall. It can become hundreds of years old, thousands of years old, and it also reproduces after its own kind. So it's also going to create for itself other seeds and be able to reproduce. When I look at that deeply, there's no way that I can say that that is accidental. There's no way that stardust and gravity and bosons and cosons all crashed together and created the perpetualness of everything that's on the earth. There is a greater rhyme or reason in my mind, and it was easy to see that starting with the Bible, seeing that the Bible to me is written by men. So that tells me that it cannot be divine, and just by the pure fact that I don't believe in a God that does the things that the Bible God says. If I ever were to find out that that were the God, I wouldn't worship that God. I would choose not to. So the God that I do adhere to or that I do think about is simply a thought process or an overall construction or lawmaker for everything that operates on the earth. Nature, you could think of it as the earth, you could think of it as the spirit, you could think of it as the sun. That's up to each individual person. But anything good that you read in the Bible, maybe that's what's divine. And you need to take a look at some of the bad things and possibly leave them behind. So start there and realize that you've been taught by your preachers, by your parents, that every word is true. And if that is true, then you believe in a God that floods people, in a God that kills, in a God that murders, in a God that does rude things like to Job behind his back, sets up little bets with Satan about bothering him and inflicting pain, and even going as far as killing his family members and taking his properties. So that's all I wanted to say about that. Hopefully I can get some people to wake up and realize that there's something much, much deeper that you're supposed to find, and it's not just plain words in a book. Okay, so I wanted to get into some of this cool dinosaur stuff that's been happening as of recent. Don't know if you've seen it in the news, but there has been a few dinosaurs that have been unearthed within the past 5 years that have had soft tissue cells inside of the bones, which is, of course, absolutely impossible if dinosaurs are 65 million years old. It would be impossible if they were 150,000 years old. Pretty much the scientific explanation or the scientific thought is that it takes about 50,000 years at maximum for these blood vessels and things like that to decompose, and we are finding those items in dinosaurs today. So the story is of California State University Northridge, one of the scientists there. His name is Mark, and he was actually terminated, and he's a 30-year scientist. He's also been published, and he was fired because he found soft tissue in a dinosaur bone. From the school said, "We will not tolerate your religion in this department." And this should start to tell you who we're dealing with these scientists. They have an agenda. They have a simple set of rules and regulations that they need everything to flow under. And if you're finding things that fall outside of that, you're going to lose your job. So this tells us that there's a problem with science. Why would you want to become a scientist knowing that if you made a finding that was against what science knows to be true now, that you could lose your job? It's absolutely insane. And if you watched my last video, which is linked in the description below, you saw Bob Earhart offer Jack Horner $20,000 to date a recent found T-Rex bone with soft tissue in it, and that was denied simply because they said it wouldn't help us, is what Jack said. And that's insanity. It's not science. Science is the retesting and the experimentations, and they should be doing all of this, and they don't want to do any of it because some of the findings is going to turn academia upside down. Some very cool pictures coming up here. This one here is from some ruins in South America somewhere. You'll see that I put an arrow towards a little depiction on that wall, and when you get close to it, you will see that it is without a doubt a Stegosaurus. There's no other animal that it could be, and this was just 3,000 years ago. So is it possible that dinosaurs lived just 3,000 years ago? One thing to look at, what are dragons? Why are there dragons in folklore? Why are there dragons in the Bible or behemoths? What were they talking about? Were they talking about dinosaurs? And has this been hidden to further push the evolutionary timeline? So you should look at a few things. For example, the Chinese zodiac, which consists of 12 animals. One of those animals is a dragon. So would they have picked a mythical character to go inside their zodiac, or is the dragon the dinosaur, and did they live with humans just a few thousand years ago? Who knows, but some of these findings are showing us that dinosaurs may not be nearly as old as we were told. There's a big difference between 18,000 years and 65 million years. This image on the screen now is one of the most incredible images I've ever seen. It's a pterodactyl with these guys that caught it or killed it. If you know any information on this picture, please let me know. Looks real to me. What do you guys think? Okay, so now we're going to watch a short video. This is with the archaeologist Mary Schwitzer. She is a old Earth evolutionary type, not a creationist. Have fun.
No one had ever found it before in a dinosaur.
And she calls up and says, we have medullary bone.
Oh, now this had to be thrilling.
Yes, very exciting. And that wasn't all.
What happened next happened by mistake. Mary put some fragments of the bone in acid to dissolve away the outermost layer of mineral. But the acid worked too fast, and all the mineral dissolved away. Being a fossil, there should have been nothing left. But there was, and it was elastic, like living tissue.
This is the piece.
No. She showed us videos she took under the microscope.
That's really what happened?
Yes.
That's the dinosaur bone?
Without mineral now. That's what was left.
It looked like the soft tissue she would have expected to find if it had been modern bone. This was impossible. This bone was 68 million years old.
So you see this, and you think, what? You
I didn't want to tell anybody.
that you'd be ridiculed,
Yes.
right?
And so I said to my technician, okay, do it again. I don't believe it.
And yet, in sample after sample, they were there. Things that looked suspiciously like flexible, transparent blood vessels. She finally mustered the courage to tell Jack.
She said she dissolved the bone away and there were blood vessels. And, I was like, shocked.
How could that be?
How could that be? That's right.
The things Mary was finding inside dinosaur bones,
Look at that.
blood vessels, and even what seemed to be intact cells, pose a radical challenge to the existing rules of science, that organic material can't possibly survive even 1 million years, let alone 68 million. Mary, Jack, and their team published their B-Rex findings in a series of papers in the journal Science and were promptly attacked. Critics said their samples might have been contaminated, or that the supposed blood vessels were actually something called biofilm, a type of slime. But as Mary showed us, she's been able to replicate her findings. These are pieces of an even older dinosaur, a well-preserved 80-million-year-old duckbill. When she dissolved it away in acid...
Let's put this under the scope here.
Well, look. Is that a blood vessel?
This is a blood vessel. You see the branches right there? And look at all of them. And it's so consistent over and over and over again. We do this bone and it comes out and I get excited every time. I can't help it. 80 million years old.
Mary published her new results last spring, and while some of her critics have been swayed, the controversy still rages. And the stakes are high. If blood vessels can survive 80 million years, what about DNA?
Inside those channels where the blood vessels would have run were these little round red structures that were all kind of lined up like a train, and they were bright red and translucent. Nobody else had seen anything like that before.
The very idea of blood cells in a 70 million year old bone was more than unconventional. It was radical. Derek Briggs is curator of invertebrate paleontology at the Peabody Museum at Yale University. What was your initial reaction to that?
Oh, I think the same reaction as everybody's, that this was totally improbable. She perhaps misinterpreted the evidence or was exaggerating the potential for what she was seeing.
Has anybody else that you know of found similar things inside a bone?
No.
Why do you think it didn't occur to anybody?
The laws of chemistry and biology and everything else that we know say that it should be gone.
70 million years old, you don't expect to find soft tissue, do you?
Not at all. No. It was utterly shocking. Like I said, a lot of our science doesn't allow for this. All of the chemistry and all of the molecular breakdown experiments that we've done don't allow for this. So if this material turns out to be actual remnants of the dinosaur, then yes, I think we will have to do some certainly rethinking of some of the basics of the model of fossilization.
You know, Mary, when I was reading about that story, I was amazed that in some of the capillaries, when you went to pull them, they snapped right back. Are you amazed at the quality of these remains?
Absolutely.
70 million years old, huh?
It just doesn't seem possible. But yes, you can actually take the vessels, and they do have internal components, and so you can take a probe and kind of squeeze those things out into solution, and the vessels are fine. It's just, I can't explain it, to be honest.
Pose a radical challenge to the existing rules of science.
Totally improbable.
Can't possibly survive even a million years.
Then you'd be ridiculed,
Yes.
right?
Why do you think it didn't occur to anybody?
The laws of chemistry and biology and everything else that we know say that it should be gone.
And next you'll see an image from 1990, and this image is actually showing samples of various dinosaur bones that were submitted for carbon-14 dating to the University of Arizona's Department of Geosciences. And these two bones actually came back with the dates of 16,120 years, and the second one was 23,760 years. And what they had done was a blind test, so the school did not know that they were dinosaur bones they were testing. Of course, if you told them that, they would quickly tell you that they can't test them because they're 65 million years old. So this is the problem. For the next 10 minutes or so, enjoy yourself. You should get a good little laugh out of Lawrence Krauss and other scientism preachers making absolute fools of themselves. Enjoy.
Hypocrite if you think the Earth is 6,000 years old and you drive a car. Because the same laws of chemistry and physics that, like the car work, tell us the Earth is not 6,000 years old.
I haven't got time for this Mickey Mouse bullshit!
Another major misconception about science is that science is involved with the truth. Science cannot prove something to be absolutely true. There are no absolute truths in science. An idea that disagrees with the evidence of experiment is false. I can hold a ball up, I can predict that it will fall up, I check it falls down. That idea I threw out the window.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
Regress, but we never say we know the absolute truth, because that is that's a claim that's an anathema to science. It's just not the way science works.
No, you're doing it all wrong.
So, we are poor data-taking devices. That's why we have such a thing as science, because we have machines that don't care which side of the bed they woke up in the morning, don't care what they said to their spouse that day, doesn't care whether they had their morning caffeine. They'll get the data right.
Relativity was discovered barely a century ago, and yet everybody in this room got here on account of our understanding of relativity. I mean, you had your car navigation system, many of you were on an airplane. And those are driven now by information from space.
Wrong, sir. Wrong.
But the space station is a $100 billion tin can sitting up there doing absolutely nothing.
The thing about science is that it's true whether or not you believe in it. You see, that's the... I'm just saying.
Science cannot prove something to be absolutely true. There are no absolute truths in science.
No. No, but I just want to know, because we've had a space program for a long time. And what we've gotten out of it is Tang and LASIK surgery.
Oh,
no. Come on. All right, it's always great to have the Reverend Neil deGrasse Tyson on our show.
This is out of control.
This is so out of control.
The lesson of science is that the universe doesn't care what you like. And it doesn't care what you want. It is the way it is. And if we could just convince people of that, that would be profound. We now can address with a straight face questions like, why is there matter in the universe? And what happened in the first billionth of a second? And so, because of that grand sense of power, I think people tend to say, well, if we can understand things all the way back to the first billionth of a second, we understand everything.
You are a fistful of stupidity.
If you can't test it, it isn't science. And there are lots of things you can't test. As has been said, that science does not make it impossible to believe in God. It just makes it possible to not believe in God. And
does it presuppose an existing set of laws of physics?
Well, that's, it's a good question. We were talking about it before this began, but what I wanted to point out, obviously, the answer is yes and no. Because
the answer is yes.
It could be that all possible laws occur.
Did you ever notice how many really stupid people you run into during the day?
And my point is, therefore, that it's not as if you need, if we ask what people really mean when they ask, what's the miracle of existence? Most of the time they say, how can you get the stuff we have unless someone said, let there be whatever? And the point is, it's not a miracle to have stuff where there was no stuff. That's no miracle.
What?
It's not a miracle to have a universe where there was no universe. That's not a miracle.
What?
And you don't have to have a uniquely set of prescribed laws of physics for our universe to arise.
Wrong. Thank you for playing. Have a nice day. Next contestant, please.
It interests me. The interesting thing that interests me is, how did our universe get here? But it's an important question.
Even the multiverse, its existence is difficult to comprehend unless there's some underlying set of laws that allows it to.
But difficult to comprehend is different than existence. That's what's wonderful about physics, is that things that were difficult to comprehend happen. But difficult to comprehend is different than existence. That's what's wonderful about physics, is that things that were difficult to comprehend happen. And we've been able to comprehend them. There may be ultimately things we'll never comprehend.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
What created the Big Bang? Where did the stuff that created the Big Bang come from?
Well, I would say read my book, but more importantly, buy my book.
I'm going to.
No, but in any case, let me just give a 1-minute answer, because it's a long question. What is remarkable is that to create stuff, it sounds like you need stuff. And to create stuff, and the conservation of energy, you would think, and this is where the argument's often used, conservation of energy means you can't start with nothing and have a universe with something. But what is amazing is when you add gravity into the mix, a miracle occurs, but a natural miracle. That gravity allows negative energy as well as positive energy configurations. And you can create, for example, 2 particles out of nothing. Now they have energy because of their rest mass. But if the gravitational field they're in is strong enough, the gravitational potential energy attracting them together is so strong and negative that the sum total of those 2 bits of energy can be precisely 0. And you can create those particles with impunity. And in fact, that happens, we think, near black holes. And in fact, it will happen in empty space. And so in fact, to create stuff, you don't need stuff. You just need nothing. And in this case, quantum mechanics.
Right. Who is this really? What's going on? How come you want me to do all these weird things?
to create stuff, you don't need stuff. You just need nothing. And in this case, quantum mechanics.
10, 9, ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour.
21st of July, 1969. Man completed his most daring and brilliant journey ever. The team of Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins, crew members of the Apollo 11 mission, had landed on the moon. I'm joined in the studio by Violet Berlin. Anyway, let us now introduce Jerry Griffin and Pat Norris. Now, Jerry Griffin, you were the flight director. Pat Norris, you were in charge of various aspects of the navigation of Apollo 11.
The space program really began with kind of an aviation base. It was really airplanes. I was an aeronautical engineer. Many of us were aero engineers.
So, flight director, now tell us about Pat.
Well, Pat was involved in the front end of these flights. He actually was involved in designing the navigation software and the math, if you will, of how to get us to where we were going. By the time we actually flew, Pat's job was pretty much finished, but without him, we wouldn't have gotten anywhere.
And we are, in computer language, talking almost Stone Age.
I'm afraid so, yes. It seemed great at the time.
Cutting edge.
But it seemed cutting edge, but things have moved on so far. But what filled a room, a computer that filled a room in those days would now fit on a wristwatch. And the sort of computer that was used in the Apollo lunar module itself is so small you couldn't buy one these days. It would be.
Well, I mean, how much K memory did you have?
Apparently, it was. If memory serves me right, it was about 32K.
One of the biggest problems of space flight, and any astronaut will tell you this, is stowage. The stuff floats around, and now in 1G it would settle down, but they had to get it put away so that when they opened the hatch, it wouldn't blow out.
Yeah.
So this is before Velcro was invented.
Yes, that's right.
Pre-Velcro.
So we
pre-Velcro. There was a life pre-Velcro.
So this is before Velcro was invented.
Yes, that's right.
Pre-Velcro.
So we
pre-Velcro. There was a life pre-Velcro.
Before Velcro was invented.
Yes, that's right.
Pre-Velcro.
So we
pre-Velcro. There was a life pre-Velcro.
So if you want the most comprehensive list of anti-Apollo evidence, check out aulis.com, A-U-L-I-S. They've got all the photos and videos for you to check out so that you can prove to yourself the obvious fact that NASA faked the moon missions. You can see here by taking a close look at the lunar rover. There's 3 separate images, and each one will actually reveal more. But you can see that there is no tracks behind or in front of the lunar rover. So how did it get there? I have heard a couple people arguing that possibly the astronauts walked over the tracks. But if you take a close look at underneath the car, then they were also walking underneath the car because there's no tracks there either. So how would you have the car been driven to that spot if there's no tracks underneath it? Pretty obvious. So, speaking of Apollo, Professor Brian Cox had made the statement that anyone who doesn't believe we went to the moon is a moron. So I took offense to that because I certainly don't think we went to the moon, and I certainly don't think I'm a moron. So if you notice by going to aulis.com, and you can check out the link in the description, there is an open letter, and actually this is the second one, an open letter to Mr. or Professor Brian Cox, basically giving him 7 questions to answer about Apollo. And being a scientist and on the up and up, and it being so obvious that we went, it's surprising that he hasn't yet answered that. So check this out.
No, I'm saying it on camera. There are so many things that you could talk about, right? You could talk about, oh, I don't know, fuck it, bollocks. The moon landings happened, and it's nonsensical. It's like saying, was America ever discovered? Right. Well, yes, it was. Did we work out how to Did we discover penicillin? Yes. Did we go to the moon? Yes. That's the end of it. There's no information, content, or use in debating it anymore.
Right. Tell me where we're going in respect to the fact that ultimately this completely proves the fact that they went there.
Well, first of all, I don't even accept that it needs proving, because you've got to be a complete moron to recognise.
Remember, if you don't hear my question, your answer doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, right. Are you really suggesting that in this program, a scientific documentary program about gravity, you're going to even mention the words, could it have been true that the moon landings were fakes?
Well, you know the script that I wrote?
Yes.
Did you read it?
No.
No. There we go.
Does it say something about the moon landings?
It says something like, it's a comedy throwaway line. I'm not saying that we're saying that it didn't happen. It's a comedy throwaway line in that, of course it bloody happened, because I fire a laser at the moon and it sends it back. It's a silly thing to have said. So...
Alright.
Where are we going, and what does it prove, or not prove, and who cares?
We're going to the loser laser range. We're going to the lunar... We're going to the... where are we going? Where are we going?
McDonald Observatory.
McDonald Observatory. I love the idea that you... so you say that... So the particle physicists, right, all the scientists say, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And then, well, you would say that. Like, well,
Yeah.
my opinion is like, well, hang on a minute. You're not allowed to have an opinion
Yes.
unless you know
Yes.
something
about what
just
you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, you can have your opinion, but you don't have a right for it to be listened to.
Yeah.
I mean, you do need some knowledge. I mean, the example I like to use is a plane. If you say, you don't sit on a plane and go, well, I think the wings, I don't want the wings to be like that.
Yeah.
I reckon
They should be
should
square.
be like that. Right, I reckon.
I want them to look like a Lego aeroplane.
You don't know, but hang on. You need a bit of aerodynamics training to design a plane wing.
Yeah.
And, but no. But it's the same idea. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
do you think it's silly? No.
Okay. That's that one
It's
answered.
just thermodynamics. I don't know. I can't get over it. I just can't get around thermodynamics.
Explain why. Is thermodynamics
right.
a good scientific reason as to why there isn't an afterlife?
Well, I think so. I mean, the thing is, you need, as far as I'm concerned, we're information processing devices.
Right.
So we're processing information at the moment,
Yeah.
which requires energy. It requires actually temperature difference to do
Yeah.
that. And so we generate that by eating food, convert it into energy, and then there's some temperature differences
Right.
around so we can do work.
Right.
So that's we're a heat engine. That's what we are, heat engines. And so if you stop providing the power source, then you start processing information.
Yes.
And
then you
I
stop.
can't get beyond that.
Right. That
And
sounds
therefore,
very, very convincing.
Steam engines work, and fridges work.
Yes.
Right? Fridges work by taking heat out of the box, by having a big
outside.
heater on the back of them.
Yeah.
If you ever wonder why a fridge has got a heater on the back of it,
Yes.
which seems a weird thing to do, but the temperature of the back of the fridge has got to be higher than the temperature of the kitchen
Yeah.
in order to allow it to do work and take the heat out of the fridge. And
Right.
that's how it works.
Yeah.
And that's how we work as well.
Yeah.
So if there were an afterlife, I would have to reconsider the engineering design of fridges with a very critical eye, and I'd have to get really worried and think that I don't understand the universe.
I mean, there's certainly a great story to be written of the physicist who wakes up and he is in heaven.
It's like, well, how do
He's going,
fridges
hang on a
work?"
minute. How do fridges work then?
Yeah, that's the first thing I'd say. Does Brian think string theory will unite quantum mechanics and relativity?
Wow, I remember a string that you tie a parcel with, and that's sort of
It's
too
the-
literate.
Basically, the problem with gravity is
Yeah.
your gravity.
Yeah.
You're coming.
It's always been a problem for me, gravity. I've never been easy with it.
The problem roughly boils down to the fact that you've got these particles look like points in that theory, in Einstein's theory, basically.
Right.
Isn't it? And what string theory does is make them little loops of string, basically.
Right.
So because they're not point-like, you get around some of the problems, basically. So it's kind of a way of trying to solve the problems and build a theory that looks like a quantum theory for
Right.
gravity. And no one knows whether it's right or not because
Right.
it's very difficult to test experimentally. Every measurement we've ever made of gravitation and it's very difficult because it's so weak as a force. It's incredibly weak compared to all the others. Have agreed with Einstein's theory. So you need to do some experiment that tells you where to go next. If you travel at the speed of light, you have to be massless for a start.
Yes, because otherwise you'd weigh 1,000,000 trillion tons, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, but interestingly, only if you're massless, not only can you travel at the speed of light, you have to. So you're forced. You can go in there.
Yeah.
So the structure of space and time, as sort of elucidated by Einstein, forces you to go at the speed of light if you've got no mass. So you go at the speed of light, and no time passes for you at all.
Right.
No time passes. All your speed, as it were, through space and time is used up flying through time.
Wow.
Flying through space at the speed of light, so no time passes. So the answer is that you can't travel at the speed of light and then turn your headlights on, because no time passes for you at all. So there's no sequence of events.
If you can't test it, it isn't science.
So check out the open letter to Professor Brian Cox, and for those of you science preachers and science backers, what is the reason that it has been since August and Brian has not answered 7 simple questions that a lot of the moon hoaxers have had? If this is truly the case...
I don't even accept that it needs proving, because you've got to be a complete moron to anyway.
But remember, if you don't hear my question, your answer doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, right.
He could very easily show himself to be a stand-up guy and answer the questions and help us all to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Unfortunately, I think there is no light. Moon missions were faked. NASA sucks. And then you die. This is Chairnism, reminding you all to open your mind, because there's truth inside. Don't lie to each other. Take it easy. Peace. Please drive home safely.